Good morning. Here we are in beautiful downtown Crestline in the San Bernardino Mountains of Southern California's Inland Empire, waiting for people to come on in and chat with me. I promised that in a future episode I would talk more about my husband, the science fiction author Philip K. Dick. So let's do that today. I've written several books about him. There's Philip K. Dick, Remembering Firebright. There's Conversations with Philip K. Dick. And Blade Runner creator Philip K. Dick. And of course, he's included in my sort of autobiography, My Life on the Edge of Reality. Oh, the full title is Tessa V. Dick. Down as the author. I forget how I did that, how I titled it. It's been a while. Sorry for the head scratching. I got itchies. A cat sat on my head all night while I was sleeping. Smokey Sue does that. Well, anyway, Phil was traumatized long before I met him. Even in his childhood, his mother told him when he was very young that he was twins, but his twin sister did not make it. She lived for about a month, but Phil survived. And he did not like to be called Philip. His mother called him Philip. And he had a very conflicted relationship with her. She was a very nice lady, but she really didn't know how to raise a child. Well, welcome in, Parmenides. Good morning. Especially a very needy child like Phil. He needed lots of hugs and comforting, and she was a traditional English mother, even though she was American, not born in England. You know, her parents and grandparents instilled the idea of the English who did not want to make their children too dependent on their parents, and wanted them to be independent and stoic, not needy. In fact, when he was 7 years old, his mother sent him to a boarding school, primarily so she could work and not have to worry about childcare and so forth. She actually wrote pamphlets for the government, pamphlets on good parenting, how to raise children. Wow. She ended up raising her niece and nephew because her sister Marion died young. She had a stroke. And Phil was very close to his Aunt Marion. Her name was spelled like a man, Marion. Oh, good morning, Widow. Welcome in. Well, anyway, as an adult, well, he was writing when he was a teenager. So was I. Come to think of it, I wrote when I was a teenager. He, Dorothy died before Phil. She died in the 70s. I don't remember the exact date, but probably around 79. She was over 70 years old. She had diabetes, and they said she had to have it removed because of the infection and the damage from diabetes. And I spoke to her on the phone before the surgery and after, and she simply did not want to live without her foot. Um, I wouldn't want to lose a foot, but dying is a little drastic. But she never came home from the hospital. So Phil didn't really have much opportunity to um, make amends with her. But she did meet our son Christopher when he was a child. I took him up there to visit and to meet his grandmother. She still had this big statue that her I guess second husband had made. Yeah. She married Phil's father when they were young and had Phil and his twin sister who did not survive. They were very tiny premature babies. And it's a miracle that Phil survived. In any case, she had a second husband who was, I guess, an artist. Uh, he made sculptures. And I guess it was a real thing for certain uh, people up north, a certain class of people. Phil's wife, Anne, Laura's mother, married a poet, and I don't know whether he died or they divorced, but then she married Phil, who was an author. Artists and poets and authors were the prime candidates for marriage among a certain upper class uh, portion of Northern California, maybe all California, but it was so obvious in Northern California. Oh, wow. Now, Phil had published some science fiction in magazines before he met Anne. Amazing stories and fantastic something, and I'm not really all that knowledgeable about science fiction. Uh, but the early, almost comic book science fiction magazines, they were a little thicker than a comic book, but made with the same cheap paper. And there was another magazine that Phil had a set of. It was called Unknown. And these were published by publishers and editors who, often the same guy, publisher and editor, who later became very famous among science fiction fans. I'm not good at names, and it isn't my thing, really. I tend to write things that could be classified as science fiction or fantasy. More fantasy than science fiction. I like surrealism. Oh, yeah, he read a lot of Van Vogt. And Phil liked, oh, crud. Title's gone from my head. And I saw the movie, I never read the book, where the guy is unstuck in time and he finds himself as a soldier in a captured soldier, a prisoner. Reconnecting. I think I'm back on. I think I'm back. I saw Forbidden Planet several times because it was on television when I was growing up. Magic realism is really interesting. Like a waterfall will turn into a human form, partially at least, like it'll have legs and arms and breasts. Stuff like that. Or the reverse, a human will flow like water while engaged in some activity. It's almost there in, oh, what's that movie called? Ghost, when the woman is making pottery. But what is that title? Stalag something or no? Where the guy goes unstuck in time and he'll be in the future where he's out in some extraterrestrial place. And then he'll be in Dresden as a prisoner of war. And then he'll be married and kind of Vonnegut is the author, but what's the title of the book? Don't remember. Anyway, Slaughterhouse-Five, thank you. Whit is smart and has a good memory. But then when Phil bought the hardcover, I think, of his next novel, I forget the title of that one too, but didn't like it at all, and neither did I. Page one has a ink drawing of a P, and it says, "This is a P." That turned me off right away. Um, I, it had a title like Campbell's Soup or something. I forget. It was obviously put out really fast so he could make money after the success of his movie, and not his best writing. Yeah, but Phil wrote one novel after another while married to Anne because, well, actually, I'm not sure exactly when they split up. I think it was early 60s, but his novel The Man in the High Castle got the Hugo Award. And even when it was just nominated, that's the big science fiction prize. It's like the Oscars for science fiction. And he knew he could sell anything, and he needed money. Partly because Anne was always complaining about money, and partly because he wanted to leave her. She had had an abortion, and he was very much against abortion, especially of his child. So he wrote one novel after another. Many of them were expansions of short stories he'd already published, or they were old manuscripts that he dusted off and cleaned up and finished. And even among those, The Unteleported Man is a very good novel. I had read it before I met him, but I didn't remember the author's name. I had also read his short story in a collection of science fiction terror tales, his story Rug, in which the dog thinks the trash men are stealing valuable things from his humans when they pick up the trash. Welcome in, V. Ken. Jimmy. Uh, hmm. It seems to me the Hugo Award was for 1963 and awarded in 64. Wow, 63, that's when Kennedy was shot. President Kennedy. JFK. Wow. Seems like the dark ages now, but I can still picture in my mind the footage that we saw on television. And it was not the Zapruder film. It was from the other side of the road. And you'll never see that footage. It doesn't seem to exist. But it was a news camera and announcer covering the parade. The the motorcade through Dallas. I know it was the other side of the road because Jackie Kennedy was in the foreground, and the car was headed toward the left of the screen. In the Zapruder film, John Kennedy is in the foreground, and it's The car is headed toward the right side of the screen. No, don't talk about that, Beacon. Not here. Oh, Faith of Our Father. Story in the first anthology, Dangerous Visions. And what's his name? God, I'm even blanking on his name. The editor. Said in the introduction to Phil's story that he'd written it while on acid, LSD. That's not true. I don't think any write anything, even their own name, on acid. Harlan Ellison, thank you, Parmenides. What a scumbag. Brilliant writer, but a total scumbag. And I will never see or read A Boy and His Dog. No, thank you. I watched him when I still knew nothing about who these people were. I watched him at the one science fiction convention Phil took me to, the Worldcon in '72. It was in Los Angeles. Harlan Ellison and Norman Spinrad were in a stairway, away from the crowd, on the floor below the stairs. And Harlan Ellison was just ripping Norman a new one. I couldn't even tell what it was about, but I knew that he was being an ass. Ellison was. And Norman Spinrad came close to crying, weeping. It was just awful. I walked away. And from that moment on, I didn't like Harlan Ellison. But when Phil introduced me to Ellison at Cal State Fullerton, which is now the University of California at Fullerton, Phil introduced me to him just outside on the campus. And Harlan Ellison looked at my big belly because I was pregnant and said, "Oh, you really got him trapped, didn't you?" Our child was planned. We wanted to have a baby, and it was more Phil's idea than mine. Oh, hi, Dave the Dude. Welcome in. Oh, yeah, and then years later, Ellison announces in public, "Oh, I have, I'm bipolar, therefore you should forgive me for everything I've ever said or done." I'm obviously paraphrasing with that, but it's basically, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I was mentally ill and now I'm on medication, so everything's okay." As if it could erase all the mean things he had said or done. And he really didn't change much. He wasn't as manic, but oh well. As they say, forgive but never forget. And Phil had thought that Harlan Ellison was a friend before that, but they were on a panel that included Ted Sturgeon, Theodore Sturgeon, but he went by Ted. And author of Make Room, which became the movie Soylent Green. Can't even remember his name. I'm doing poorly this morning. I should have read my own book. I might remember what I said in that. Well, Harlan Ellison started ranting and cussing on stage, and there were children in the audience. I had my baby with me. Well, Harlan Ellison was ranting and cussing, and my baby started crying loudly. So I picked him up and went up and put him on Phil's lap. And baby Christopher, started playing with Ted Sturgeon's beard. Most babies are afraid of men who have beards because their fathers are clean shaven. But Christopher was afraid of clean shaven men because his father had a beard. Anyway, several people in the audience thought that was a brilliant thing to do, but really I only did it because I knew he would stop fussing. He was Daddy's boy, never was Mama's boy. His first word was "da" for Dad or Daddy, not "ma" for Mom or Mommy. One of his first words, almost a sentence. I was making a salad to go with dinner, and this 2-year-old pads into the kitchen and looks at it and says, "Lettuce, yuck." He did not like lettuce. I just said, "Well, you don't have to eat it. I like lettuce." He was very opinionated even as a baby. So Phil really took fatherhood seriously, had a really strong relationship with his son up until his death, even after we split up. Oh, Dave the Dude wonders who hurt Ellison. Well, Harlan Ellison claimed that he grew up on the streets of New York. I'm not really clear on whether he said he joined a gang or he just acted like a gang member. But he loved to wear a black leather jacket and carry a knife. So maybe he grew up on the streets, and when he left the streets, he took the streets culture with him. A good point, Parmenides. People with fragile egos do tend to put others down to make themselves feel higher. Yeah, Harlan Ellison was a very nice guy, just in person in normal life without being on stage. Kind of quiet on stage. Oh, and at the Worldcon in '72, um, Phil traded name tags with a woman we had just met, Linda. Uh, she became Linda Hartinian, but at the time her name was Linda Wolf, and the people who made the name tag misspelled her last name. Instead of WOLFE, it was WOFLE. So for a while we called her Linda Waffle. Well, Phil had traded name tags with her. It obviously was not his own name tag. And he was talking to a woman and said, "I'm Philip K. Dick." And she said, "You are not. Your name tag doesn't say that." And then her husband stepped in and was getting rather strongly objecting to him trying to impress his wife. And Phil kept saying, "Yeah, I'm Philip K. Dick." And I said, "Yeah, he is." And I think it was Tim Powers came along and said, "Yeah, he's Philip K. Dick." And at the time, Tim Powers was not a published author. He was a college student at Cal State Fullerton. Okay. Beacon says, "Good thing she didn't have an Afghan coat on," as in sheepskin. Well, Linda did have a. Now, how could I forget that word? Criminy. I'm really losing it today. Like a triangular knitted warming thing. No sleeves. You just put it. What the heck do you call those? I know that word. Not a poncho. Poncho goes over your head. This just goes on your back, and the 2 points of the triangle come to the front. Criminy. Let's see if Google can help me. Oh, no. Let's see. Shawl. 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 Yeah, I slept off and on all day yesterday. I know because I was playing an audio book of Sherlock Holmes, and I'd be waiting for the end of a story, and the next thing I knew, it was in the middle of a different story. And I did that all night long. Well, from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. And then I got up and made some toast, ate a little of that, and went back and napped a little more. I got up at 7 so I could come on here and do a live stream. Yeah, I went on for a little bit online last night. Uh, talked with Jason, who also had insomnia. There's a cat that wants in or out. Let me check the door. Oh, it's Smokey Sue who wants back in. All right, come on. We got a little rain last night. The walkway is damp, but there's no pooled up water or anything. Yes, Smokey Sue. You want to say hi to your fans? Give me that face. Give me that face. Say hello. Silly cat. You're no fun. Well, now you're in the dark. Silly cat. She wants her treats and she didn't even say hi. Now she's fluffing up my blanket so she can sleep on it. Yes, you are. No, don't get on my lap. You're all pokey paws. I like to have a cat lie down on my lap, but not stand there with pokey paws. All right. I'll get the treats. Uh-huh. Okay, we'll put some here, and we'll put some there, some here, and some there, because Tora wants some too. Oh, here comes 3C. Pretty kitty. Catkin. All right, let's give you extra because there's 2 cats sharing. All right, let's see if Tora will show up on camera. Sort of. Okay. 3C's totally in the dark. Okay. Well, when I met Phil, he had been writing 2 novels before I met him. And Flow My Tears, the policeman said, was basically finished. But then his house was invaded and torn apart, and they took his manuscripts for the 2 books he was working on, but he had sent a copy of the manuscript for Flow My Tears, the policeman said, to his lawyer, the carbon copy. Not sure why, but he did. So after I met him, he asked his lawyer to send the manuscript so he could finish last minute edits and so forth. And because his publisher, Doubleday, had already paid in advance on it, and they wanted the manuscript. But there was a second novel he had been writing, and it wasn't finished and didn't have any more copies of it. They took the original and the carbon copy. So he just scrapped that one and began writing A Scanner Darkly. And it was based on loosely based on his experiences leading up to and including the invasion of his house. Fortunately, nobody was home at the time. The place was torn apart. Something awful. Parmenides wants to know whether his visions were serious. Well, they really happened, but not the way he told them. Phil embellished and even made stuff up, but they were strange enough to get my attention. Oh, if they hadn't conducted a raid on his house, Phil called it a hit, um, there would have been not have been the same. Oh crap! The connection keeps cutting out. It would not have been the same, but there would have been a Scanner Darkly. Yeah, we thought at the time that this voice to skull technology was being used on Phil. I had some strange things like that, but they were not the same as what Phil described. And they didn't happen as often. Hi, it's Sequentia. Welcome in. YouTube didn't notify you. Well, I try to come on every Thursday morning around 8 a.m. Pacific time, Verizon permitting. I'm trying to get switched to Spectrum or Frontier. I'm not sure I can make the move just yet. I still owe monthly payments on the modem that Verizon sold me. But while Phil was having those visions, the apartment next door became vacant and it was not rented out right away. Some men came in a yellow Econoline, Ford Econoline van and brought these big cardboard boxes up the stairs to the apartment next door, and it was all kinds of electronic equipment. Now, at the time, I thought the landlord was spying on his wife. They installed an illegal telephone line. We learned that later, that it was illegal when the phone company disconnected it. They told us about it because we were having trouble with our phone. And we had complained and asked for repairs, and the phone company repair guys told us, well, someone had tapped into your phone line and that's why they had a working telephone in the vacant apartment. I still wonder if he might have been spying on his wife to see if she was cheating on him. But it was weird. Calls and sometimes being unable to call our phone. This was the days when our phone was bolted to the kitchen wall, but it was not a dial phone. You actually, I think by then we had the push buttons instead of the dials. Not positive, but I think so. And it worked off a cable that came from the telephone pole outside. That's what we called them then. Now we call them power poles because they're only for electricity and cable TV. Anyway, um, we did get curious and go in. The door wasn't locked, and there was all kinds of electronic equipment in the hall closet. I don't trust my cell phone. Now they say, don't have it near you, because it transmits, to stay connected. But it seems to me that it doesn't make a whole lot of difference because cell phone signals are all over the place coming from the cell towers looking for cell phones that want to connect. So you really can't get away from all that radiation. And they tell me the aluminum foil helmet doesn't work. It has to be copper. And there's a guy who sells baseball caps with copper netting inside to put over your head to protect you from cell phone signals. So no more tinfoil hats. They have to be copper. Ow, ow. Tora, that's Pokepods. Are you going to say hi to your adoring fans? Say hi. Where's the kitty kisses? That's better. Yes, she's a good kitty. Oh boy, you're sleepy too? You just got treats. What makes you think you need more? Huh? I have the door open so there's more light in here. It's a little chilly, but not too bad. Not cold enough to turn on the heater. Okay, all right. How about some Cheesy Craze Crunch? I think I have some in here. There it is. Yes. Oh, and Tutu wants some too. You want that? Do you? Where are you? Oh, she wants it over there, not over here. Okay. Cats are weird. They'll pester you without mercy to give them treats. But if you put the treats in this spot, when they wanted them in that spot, they won't eat them. They have to be in the spot the cat chose. At Sequentia just watched a Y-Files video about the guys who claim to have invented free energy and their surprisingly consistent demise from, air quotes, natural causes, end quote. Well, I've heard stories of people who installed the copper wire things around the edges of their roof and got free electricity, but the power company and the government went to court, and the judge ruled that they were actually pulling power off the power lines, not from the air. Never seen Y-Files. W-H-Y, Y-Files. Never heard of it before. Mm. I got nose ouchies. Lord. Well, I don't know. Phil definitely had some neurological problems, or maybe mental problems, but it seemed neurological, and that would not be uncommon with an extremely premature baby, which he was. He would physically freeze and just stand there, but it usually had some emotional trigger, anger or sadness, but extreme grief, extreme anger. I don't know whether Phil saw any films by Alejandro Jodorowsky. I never heard of that guy. So probably not. As much as Phil talked, he might have mentioned him. Um, Parmenides wants to know. He did subscribe to the first sort of cable TV network, Select TV, SELEC TV. It came in over the phone lines, so you couldn't use your phone while you were watching it because you were using it to get the TV show. And they'd have one show, one channel, one show at a time. They did show events like boxing and other sports. I think you had to pay extra to watch those. But they had all kinds of movies, mostly movies. He didn't like to leave the house. He said himself he had agoraphobia, Greek for fear of the marketplace. Yeah. Well, this is shortly before cable television became a thing. At one time, I signed up for the local cable that was just in the city of Orange. I've forgotten what they called it, but it was cable TV for $10 a month. And frankly, it wasn't that good. For example, Channel 4 especially, but channels that we could get over the air had better reception without the cable. If I turned off the cable and just watched channel, it come in better signal. But they were pioneers. Oh man. And it got to where I couldn't afford $10 a month. Of course, $10 was more money back then. Candy bars were 50 cents, not $2 or $3. And even then, I thought that was too high because when I was a kid in the 60s, candy bars were 10 cents and they were bigger. They were bigger than what they sell for $2 or $3 now. I never saw Videodrome. I don't know what it is even. I assume it's a movie. Oh, yeah. About a small cable TV station producer, weird and bizarre. My eyelashes. I don't know if they're just bugging me or if they have cat hair in them. Yeah. Inflation has been ridiculous over the past 5 years. And cost of living increases, whether you're a union worker or you're on Social Security or welfare, it has not kept up. They freely admit that the inflation calculation is just wrong. They calculate it by how much the price of a television goes up, or an appliance like refrigerators and washing machines. And people are not buying those. They can't afford them. I mean, I thought I could buy a new washing machine, and guess what? The cheapest ones cost more than my house payment. Oh, coffee is ridiculous. But what's really more ridiculous is that the quality has gone down so much. They're using, even before the tariffs, they were using cheaper beans and a process that gets more coffee out of the beans, but along with it, it gets out really nasty parts of the coffee bean chemicals in the coffee. Very good. So I sprang for a jar of free K, free trade organic free trade coffee. It's a little better, but the price, I for the price, I can't do that all the time. Silver finally went up to the level it hit in the 1980s, around 1980, when gold was worth 300 an ounce and silver was $30 an ounce. I think the other day it actually got up to $40. But if you tie it into gold, it should be about 300 an ounce for silver. I don't remember burgers being $1 million, but I think you're talking about when the exit door leads in. The main character wins a free trip to college, and you don't want to go to college. It's not a good place. I'll tell you, I went to a local hamburger shop. Their burgers are tons better than McDonald's, and they don't cost as much as McDonald's. I got a cheeseburger with onion rings cheaper than a Big Mac with fries. And tons better. It had real lettuce, real tomatoes, and cheese, and I got mine with onions. And just enough Thousand Island dressing. and the bun was better. I think it was brioche. Although I kind of like the hamburger buns that have the seeds on them. But you can't have everything. And the onion rings were not, frozen and then popped into the deep fryer. They were obviously made to order. I'm sure they sliced the onions ahead of time, but they were dipped in the batter and fried without ever freezing them. Yeah, potato buns are nice and soft. Parmenides, you're right, they're good. Sorry, my mouth leaks. When the tumor gets a little smaller. Oh, this one grew a little. Uh-oh. I got to put that ointment on it. It was getting smaller and going away. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, my mouth leaks because my upper lip doesn't close properly with my lower lip. The real pain, though, is that I can't get my dentures in. The tumors are in the way. But I do have this prescription ointment that seems to work slowly, but it works to make them shrink. If it doesn't work, I'll have to have surgery. I don't want to have surgery, but if it's necessary, it will happen. I'm really mad at the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles. I can't get real ID. They won't accept the documents I have. I never changed my name legally because there was no reason to do that. Like many women, when I got married, I put down a different name. Obviously, a different last name because that was what you did in the 1970s. Although some women kept their maiden names, most took their husband's last name. And I used my nickname instead of my first name, which many women did. Oh, well, your first name is different. We can't, it isn't the same as on your birth certificate. So, and they want me to go to court and get a judge to approve my different name. Now, they'll usually waive the court costs when you do that, but you do have to pay to file the papers, to file the documents to get a court date. And I don't know how it is where you are, but in California, it takes months to get an appointment for anything. Then they said I had to get eyeglasses because I could not read the eye chart. I don't think they had it in focus. It's on a computer at that particular DMV. It's a computer screen. And it was totally white with no letters at all. So what was I supposed to read? Well, I started applying online to get my driver's license renewed. It expired in June, and the earliest appointment I could get to renew my driver's license was in September. Now I have to get eyeglasses, and the earliest appointment I could get for eyeglasses is in December, 2 days before Christmas. It took me 2 months to get the appointment with the dermatologist about the tumor on my face. It had suddenly just whew, grown like crazy. And that's a really dangerous sign. And it still took 2 months to get into the dermatologist. It was the earliest appointment they had. And like so many things, they're like a fast food business. They want you in and out as fast as possible. Well, Parmenides, I think World War III is happening. They just don't call it that. It's being fought primarily with economics, but also with protests that become violent and with, let's just say, bad people who have infiltrated not only the United States but countries all over the world. Look at Venezuela. It used to be a wealthy and prosperous nation. Now it's an S hole. You know, the S word, poop. There's a shot for cancer. I don't know. I believe the one I've got was caused by a certain medical procedure. As I had basically a wart, a very small wart on my lip, and before I could get into a doctor to have it removed, it became this monster that's eating my face. Well, Charlie Kirk, I don't know. He said things that people disagreed with. They say that he was spouting hate. Now, I haven't watched enough of him to have an opinion there, but the stories I've watched about him with clips of him talking don't seem that way. I'm just not interested in him. I barely knew his name, but I had seen a few clips. And when they showed a picture of him after the shooting, I recognized the face. But I guess we have freedom of speech as long as we agree with people who, have beliefs that we don't like. Yeah. Oh, Jimmy Kimmel got canceled. I no, I have not seen any clips of what he actually said, but apparently he was insisting that um, the shooter was MAGA. I don't think so. Something beeped. I'm going to see why it's beeping. Oh, okay. It's fully charged. Come on. Give me the cable. I gotta plug it into the phone now. Okay. Apparently, um, the regular um, oh, come on. Media, but that's not the word I was looking for. Networks of NBC, ABC, and CBS have stricter rules than the cable channels like MSNBC. They actually get their broadcast licenses free of charge in exchange for delivering the news and being truthful and limiting opinion. You know, they can give their opinion, but they have to say it's opinion, not fact, not news. I think we already have social credit scores, Witta. I never thought Jimmy Kimmel was funny ever. I just watch it. Yeah, I watched on Camel Vegan. He has these other people on as guests, so I don't have to subscribe to half a dozen channels. Oh, wow. Oh, another good one. Oh, what's his name? The guy from he's ethnic Indian. He's from England and now working as a doctor in the United States. He's really good. Let's see if I can, but when I've read them, I delete them. No, not that one. Oh well. Hi, Angus. Come in. Hour and 15. I talked a lot about Philip K. Dick and then I got sidetracked. Oh, shoot. Oh, Kimmel can speak. He can do what all the conservative cancel victims did, start a podcast. You just can't do it on our dime on a station that doesn't have to pay any fees for its broadcast license. Maybe CNN will hire him. That's the thing. They get special privileges, the three major legacy networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS. They don't have to pay for their broadcast license. The cable channels do. So they have fewer rules. Go on. Kimmel reminds you of Jason Taverner. The main character of Flow My Tears, the policeman said. Well, so much of the advertising revenue comes from big pharmaceutical companies now that they certainly cannot criticize pharmaceuticals. They'll lose their money. Tora, I don't like poking paws on my lap. Yeah, he can still speak. He just is facing consequences. Kimmel is. Yeah, Deacon, there is no such thing as the Jews. There's at least half a dozen different Jewish sects, Orthodox, Reformed, etc. And there's, of course, the secular Jews who aren't religious at all and might not even be ethnic Jews. A lot of the Eastern Europeans are considered Jewish, even though they aren't. Because when the tribes of Israel scattered a couple thousand years ago, about 2,500 years ago, many of them went to Eastern Europe. There's simply elites, and they're often atheists, and most do not have any Jewish heritage, real or just assumed. What we're up against is a wealthy and powerful elite who don't care how little they have as long as it's more than we have. They um, just want to have everything there is. Reconnecting. Come on. Tora, get out of my stuff. Okay, I'm back. They didn't like what I said, obviously. Can't blame Verizon for every glitch. YouTube, knock it off. Ah, ah. I'll give you one example from the ancient past. The Jews of southern Israel hated the Jews of northern Israel because the Jews in northern Israel had married pagans, so they were only half Jewish. 4chan Drive? Angus? Oh, yeah. Deacon, you gotta settle down or I'll have to mute you. The, the so-called lost tribes are not lost. Many of them left the faith or married non-Jews and so forth. I should say non-Israelis, because there were 12 tribes and the Jews were only one of the 12 tribes. But because their custom was not to marry within your own tribe, but to marry someone from a different tribe. Obviously, that to us nowadays with science and all, it makes sense. You don't want to intermarry. All 12 tribes are represented because they intermarried within the 12 tribes. In addition, not all of the other 11 tribes actually left, but when the Persian emperor freed the Jews and they actually funded their travels and rebuilding of the temple, a lot of people stayed in Babylon, which of course is Iraq today, and in Persia, because life was so good there, and who wanted to go to that dried up old desert of the Holy Land? And the Jews who came back to Israel, to Jerusalem, represented all the tribes. There are no lost tribes. We know where they are. And they're everywhere. Oh, Calvinists are nuts, in my opinion. I once put my son into a Lutheran school, not teaching religion necessarily, but grammar school. I think it was third grade, might have been fourth. They were Missouri Synod, and the other Lutherans hate them. Well, I didn't know anything about it at the time, but they were very Calvinist, and I just had to forget about that and put him in public school. I couldn't afford a private school. The Lutheran school was cheap, and Phil, even though we were divorced, he was very connected with his son. He paid the tuition. And he wasn't wealthy. He didn't have much money until that movie, Blade Runner, shortly before he died. He had maybe of actually being financially stable. And then he had a stroke, and in the hospital he had a heart attack and he was gone. Tora, you want co-host credit? Get out of my stuff. You've had your treats. Oh, you got to see her staring me down. Never stare at a cat. All right, come on. Oh, she wants them in that spot this time and not in her usual spot. Okay. Eat your treats and leave me alone. Oh, that's interesting. Angus says his late step-grandfather was an accountant and was hired by an attorney handling Phil's estate after he died. That's very interesting. For a short time, they had the estate completely handled by attorneys, but Phil's daughters and son, the three children, thought they were not doing a good job. So now they just handle legal matters, but Isa is doing the most work on handling the estate, managing it, especially with regard to film. and television, like the Netflix series and so forth. Yeah, the estate was really messy because the people who, yeah, no, Laura was an adult when Phil died, married and so forth, and had a good job. Isa and Chris were still children. And, well, I had to sue the estate because they refused to pay child support for my son. And I got, even in court, I got cheated. I think my attorneys were incompetent, but that's another story. Um, but I eventually got what they call a family allowance for my son. I didn't keep track of everything, so I don't know exactly what Isa got, but I'm sure it was not enough. My son Christopher was that he was so close to his dad. Every Thursday evening, Phil would take Chris to visit Tim Powers and his wife. They lived walking. Evil variety. Come on, hurry up. I think I'm back. Phil had bought a brand new Mercury Capri with money from the movie Blade Runner. And when he died, it had 600 miles on it. That was all. Every time he went somewhere that you had to drive, he would get someone else to drive him. Ah, well, I've been on for an hour and a half. I've had to reconnect 3 or 4 times. I've lost count. Yeah. Well, yeah. For a short time, KW Jeter would be at Tim's house on Thursdays, but Jim Blaylock was a regular. And I met him a few times because we both worked at Chapman College, which sold out and became a university. They were all about teaching, and now they're all about money. Ah, Phil at least said he really didn't like fame, perhaps even despised it because it would change a person. They wouldn't be as humane or as human because they were famous. And in interacting with the public as little as he did, he was just an ordinary person. He didn't put on airs. And throughout our marriage, a number of magazines sent people to interview him. He was just, you know, just an ordinary person around them. He didn't act like, oh, I'm a celebrity. A French company filmed him at Disneyland. An English company filmed him at home. That was, oh, I forget. It's a series on British TV. Carousel, I think it might be called, something like that. And they didn't have their film developed in Los Angeles. They took undeveloped film through the airport arena. Thank you, Angus. I don't like the arena people, but that's another story. So their film was not developed, and the airport put it through the X-ray machine and ruined it. Yeah, Arena has done a number of things on Phil. They interviewed me for one of them, and they were total jerks. They told me to meet them at a local restaurant. I think they said 9 o'clock, whatever it was. I arrived like 5 minutes early, and they were all through eating. They didn't even let me sit down for a cup of coffee. It's okay, let's go. And the questions they asked were ridiculous. One of their actual questions was, what did Phil eat for breakfast? Who cares? So I gave a flippant answer. I said, Rice Krispies, because I don't cook. Actually, I did often make bacon and eggs, but I was really put off by their attitude. Oh well. See, they had wanted to film me in my kitchen. God knows why. They didn't film anyone else in their kitchen. And I refused. I said, no, you're going to film me at work, at the college where I teach. And I won the argument, but what I did not want to tell them, and I'm glad I didn't, at that time, I did not have a kitchen. I was living in my car and using the restroom and the coffee pot at work. I was working 2 jobs and could not come up with the deposits to rent an apartment. My son had turned 18 and moved out, and he was constantly asking me for money for stuff for his baby. And I couldn't say no. And it wasn't large amounts of money anyway. The $20 here and there really cuts down on your ability to save up for an apartment. So I finally rented a room after 2 years of sleeping in a Honda Accord, which was not as bad as you might think. The driver's seat went down completely flat. So you could just lie down and sleep, or I could. I'm a small person. Oh, yeah. He liked Brian Eno. Let me get off the subject of being homeless for 2 years. I couldn't do that now. but I was like about, let's see, 40 years old. Different body back then compared to 71. Anyway, I thought Brian Eno had recorded on the 30-foot wire, but it was someone else. He played that for me once and then followed it with whale songs to compare them because he thought the 30-foot wire sounded a lot like whale songs. And my problem with that is I don't like whale songs. They make me feel uncomfortable. Oh, Monty Python did sketches on rude documentary interviewers. Cleese was a master of irritating interviewer behavior, Etsequentius says. Yeah, the Arena documentary is entertaining, but it really is rather superficial. And if I remember correctly, they featured that crazy psychologist who was out of his mind. He actually believed everything Phil said. The first thing you learn as a therapist is you don't challenge them, but you don't agree with them. You don't believe everything. Especially in Phil's case, he was a storyteller. He actually advised Phil to cut off all ties, and all I was doing was taking his son to see him so Chris would know his father. And it was Phil's idea. After 3 or 4 visits, he started inviting me to come upstairs with them and spend a little time at Phil's condo. Wasn't my idea. And if he cut off all ties with me, he'd never see his son. That guy was nuts. Sure, there are toxic relationships, but that doesn't include your children, especially young children. Oh, yeah. I did complain to the agency that regulates psychologists about him releasing the content of his therapy, of Phil's therapy sessions and diagnosis and so forth. And they said, well, since Phil's dead, it doesn't matter. Very spats, yeah. I heard that he died. I don't know. I've never been in contact with him since a post on somebody's blog where he out of the blue attacked me and I wasn't even on the blog, except they had used a picture that I took of Phil, a, a photograph of mine. And I just commented that I wish you'd give me photo credit. And Spats immediately jumped all over me. Oh, it's so hard to point the camera and click a button. The guy obviously knows nothing about photography. Composition, manual focus, and setting the um, type of film and how much light it needs. There's words for that I just can't come up with on the fly. I used to know all that stuff, but I've quit. Oh, he did pass away. Sad. I heard that he had been actually in a mental hospital before that. Noticeably to the people around him. I don't know whether that's true, but I could see it. Yeah, it is ironic. Well, Phil, a lot of what he did was performance. To promote his books and to try to get people to look into what happened to him in Marin County in 69 and starting in 69 and through early 72 when he went to Vancouver, British Columbia, and never came back to Marin County except once or twice to visit his ex-wife Anne. But he was really a genius at promotion. It's too bad that science fiction was looked down on as, oh, that's just comic books for teenagers. And yet science fiction has explored some of the most important issues of our time. Yeah, many, if not most people who study psychology are trying to cure themselves. Phil would have wished to be on Letterman or Leno, but he never was. We used to watch David Frost interviewing people. If I remember correctly, he interviewed Richard Nixon after the resignation. Yeah, he did. He did interview him. I think it was after the resignation. Phil watched Saturday Night Live on TV, but most nights he went to bed after the Carol Burnett show or one of those rotating mystery/detective shows like I can't think of a title. Barnaby Jones. That's not the title I want. The guy who played Maverick, but in this show he was a private detective. James Garner in forgot the name of the show, and the one where the DA and his wife end up investigating murders. I think it's called Heart to Heart. HART. He did love watching Carol Burnett and the Bob Newhart show and Saturday Night Live. Phil never had cable. I discussed this earlier. He had an early uh, inspiration of cable TV. It was called Select TV. One channel showed movies and sporting events, and the signal came in over your telephone line back when everybody had a actual telephone, not a cell phone. So you couldn't use your phone while you watched Select TV. Yeah, Select TV was very limited. I don't think they exist anymore. Oh, I had cable TV a couple of times, but it wasn't worth the cost, at least in my mind. But when Chris was 12 or 13 years old, I think 12, uh, he adored Michael Jackson and had to have cable TV to see Michael Jackson. He had to have a pair of those nylon cargo pants, kind of silver colored or black. And he wanted a white glove so bad. I couldn't afford the cheap junk they sold as Michael Jackson gloves. So I got a pair of white gloves and I sewed sequins onto one of them for Chris. Hi, P.O. I'm about ready to sign off. Sorry, but I've been on for just 10 minutes short of 2 hours. Yeah. Oh, Chiller. Or was it Thriller? I think both words were in the song. He just loved that. And then, no, it was before that when Chris discovered Kiss, the four guys who wore face makeup so they wouldn't lose their day jobs. Thriller. Thank you, Etsy Quintia. MJ impression. Oh, Michael Jackson. Tee hee hee. Well, he was very talented, but apparently had a very, very screwed up childhood. Their father apparently was not a nice guy. Oh, special guest voice appearance by Vincent Price. Yeah, I thought they had dubbed that from a movie, but maybe he actually voiced it for them. Anyway, I'm winding down. I've talked, in between other things, I've talked a lot about Phil tonight because I had promised to tonight, this morning. It just feels like night because my sleep pattern is all messed up. Well, tonight I'll take a Benadryl so I'll be sleepy. I don't take it every night. A, because I don't always have sinus problems, and B, if you take it all the time, you get used to it and your body doesn't respond as well, and I'm not in favor of increasing the dose. It's just an allergy medication. And it saved my life a couple times when I had a major allergic reaction and really didn't have time to wait for paramedics. I mean, I was in shock. And grabbed two Benadryl. The dosage is one. I took two, 50 milligrams instead of 25. Anaphylactic shock is not to laugh about. Your blood pressure crashes and you pass out. The first one was penicillin allergy. The second one, much more recent, was peanuts. I grew up on peanut butter and peanuts. I love peanuts. Can't eat them. I don't want to die. Ever since COVID, I've had weird allergies. Oh, Angus's dad bought him a Jackson jacket, Michael Jackson jacket, when he was 11 and he wouldn't wear it. So his uncle wore it when they went to see a movie in Westwood and everyone was laughing. He looks like Bill Murray. So your uncle bought it. What did I say? I thought I said uncle. Oh, he's from Chicago. Bill Murray's from Chicago, huh? And that's going back a ways. Anyway, I've got to get the morning started, eat something. And what I call recycle coffee. You know what happens when you drink a cup of coffee? You have to pee. I've been sipping it for a couple hours now. Yeah, 80s fashion. Oh man, that late 70s, early 80s was the time of polyester everything. It had to be shiny and silky, but not real silk. No, polyester. Polyester leisure suits. I had one once. Oh, wow. Those were the days. I was wearing polyester because it was cheap, and I was a poor student, barely getting by. But I didn't have like a gigantic flower on top of my head. They'd have like a hat with a daisy that was as big as your head on the front of the hat. Of course, not a real daisy, it was plastic. Oh well. Anyway, I got to get going, and I'm sure you guys have stuff to do as well. So let's see. Thank you all. Typo already for chatting with me, and have a great day. It's been real, and I love you all. So be sure to come back next time, and we'll chat again. Bye.